Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, June 13th, 2022. Time for another week of shows, and it is Monday the 13th, and it doesn't mean anything in particular, but if it was Friday, or felt like Friday, we would have trouble. We don't. It doesn't feel like Friday. It definitely feels like a Monday. I'm no mistaking that Monday feeling. All right. Well, what'd you do over the weekend? Did you talk to everyone you know about the January 6th hearings? You know they start again today. Is that right? Or is it tomorrow that they start again? I can't even remember anymore. But they're doing the 10 a.m. thing, and I think it might be tomorrow because I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if Joan is going to have to cover the hearings live and whether we could bother her while she's doing it. That would be interesting. I mean, the conversation would be mostly, I think, clacking on the keyboard. Well, she says, oh, what was your question again? So I don't know how well it would work. But at any rate, if you talk to everybody you know about the hearings already, discussed them on Friday, maybe talked about over the weekend, I remind you, you haven't talked about them with Greg Dworkin yet. So, not everybody you know, although maybe you did it on Twitter. If so, I don't know. Well, you do the show, and I'll sleep in if that's the problem. Okay, well, at any rate, time for us to start things off here. Oh, Greg's typing notes, telling us again when things will start. I know it's 10 a.m., 9 Central, of course, and let's see, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Is that right? Oh, okay. So I guess they are out of the way for Tuesday, and, well, at least that won't be the problem with connecting with Joan. Who knows whether everything is settled out where, out in the way on the West Coast, all the way out there in the other time zone and everything where she's now settled, or at least getting settled. I know it's a little difficult it's always tough to move. So, okay, at any rate, we'll look past all of that and look past the fact that I don't even remember when the hearings are coming on. So they are today. It's less than an hour. I understand there's all sorts of fun witnesses lined up. I hope they make good use of them. I think I read this morning, maybe Talking Points memo tweeting about it, that Bill Stepien, White House aide, formerly a top aide to Chris Christie, going to have some trouble in Fort Lee, traffic problems in Fort Lee guy. Anyway, he apparently on the list of witnesses to speak, and I'm not certain what they're hoping to draw out of him or under what circumstances, because I also understand he's running the campaign of the Republican who's primarying Liz Cheney. So I don't know. It's a weird relationship going on here. I assume he's coming as a hostile witness, and I don't know. I didn't think they were going to do that with the limited television time that they had, but I don't know. We'll see how things play out. There's still a lot of work to be done. Still a lot of work to be done here at the committee level, at the DOJ, at convincing the American public that they are interested in this thing. Though I do understand 20 million people tuned in for the primetime hearing. Great idea. Seems to have worked out well. Certainly better than The Apprentice ever did, in case, if you're trying to figure out how will Donald Trump regard this. Of course, he's ignoring it entirely. He is disallowing the discussion of anything that happened at the hearings on his Truth Social. So that tells you a little bit about where they are. Greg tells me Stepien and who? Stirewalt? Is that right? S-T-I-R-E, Stirewalt? I don't even know who that is. The name does not ring a bell, but you can tell us about it. Stepien reportedly supervised the conversation with Trump's campaign around the Stop the Steal messaging and associated fundraising. The committee said at the time of his subpoena that messaging included the promotion of certain false claims relating to voting machines, despite an internal campaign memo in which staff determined such claims were false, the committee added. Okay, so I understand why they want to talk to him. I'm not certain why they would schedule him for the televised hearings. Maybe they're looking for a clash and a confrontation, and he's a person who's in Maybe they have evidence enough to put him in legal jeopardy if he does anything but give them the confrontation that they want. It's a very dicey thing to do on television or anywhere, in the courtroom, etc. It's very rare, these Perry Mason moments, as they used to call them in law school, very rare, because it's a bad idea, that anybody will be put on the stand without everyone knowing pretty much exactly what they're going to say, unless they reverse themselves and create the moment by just lying and getting themselves in perjury trouble, which sometimes, is the design, but it's very rare for anyone to be put on the stand without knowing exactly what is going to be asked and how it's going to be answered. So I'm a little bit baffled by it. I would be watching at 10 if I were you, except if I were you, I'm listening to this show. Unless you're listening by podcast, in which case, fine and dandy. But now I want to watch at 10. But they'll probably not even get around to talking to the guy until 11 anyway, so that's good news. All right, Greg Dworkin is here, not at 10, not at 11, but a little closer to 9. So let's catch up from the weekend. How you doing, Greg?
Hey, good morning. So the schedule is Monday today at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central. Wednesday, 10 a.m. And then Thursday is going to be 1 p.m. So since you love watching committee meetings on TV more than anything in the whole world, you get to watch on Thursday.
All right. Yay. That's excited voice.
But, I'm just paying attention to this one day at a time. So today, the whole theme is going to be the big lie.
Theme.
And Bill Stepien, of course, is a big liar. He was previously lying for Chris Christie, but now he's lying on behalf of Donald Trump. Presumably, he's a hostile witness, and he's here because of subpoena. And see, the little fish don't have grifting money behind them so that they can defy everything and then get their legal bills paid. So generally, when they get a subpoena, they show up. It's the bigger fish who think that they can go on to the grifting circuit and get money that refuse.
All right. I mean, I would have thought maybe he's just too late to the grifting buffet. I mean, it seems like a never-ending, all-you-can-eat affair, but he's not a big grifting name.
Well, he's youngish and he's still working, and that's half the problem with Republicans. They think they have to do this in order to stay working. And, obviously they put themselves in party over country. But it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. The whole theme for Monday, for today, is the big lie. So presumably Stepien will be in a position to not only suggest that maybe as a data guy he was aware that Trump lost and told him, or at the same time he was the key person who shifted the whole public relations social media discussion from you have to support us to win the election to they're stealing it from us. And he was, a key player in that. So presumably they have emails or other social media chats to pin him, and that's why he's here.
Okay. I guess another possibility is, we'll see. I don't think I need to really predict what he's going to do. If it's a hostile witness, it'll be approached with some care, though he might be perfectly fine saying, I knew you lost. I told Trump that he lost because Ivanka has already said it. So maybe he thinks
and Bill Barr already said. I just, Bill Barr told me, and I looked at the data, and I couldn't find anything to say otherwise.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jason Miller.
I guess. All right. So we'll see what they have to say. Otherwise, I guess he could be looking for confrontation. I don't think he cares that much about this other client that's running against Liz Cheney. That's not really worth doing.
I don't know what he's going to do. He's a bit of a mystery. And so I think the focus is going to be on him because nobody knows what he's going to do. The one that people do know what he's going to do is the other fellow whose name is Chris Stirewalt. And you don't recognize his name, but you know him. And the reason you know him is that he's the analyst for Fox News that called Arizona for Biden that got everybody upset on election night.
70s disco hit or something. No, something. All right. So he called. He's the guy who works for Fox, the Fox producer.
Yeah, he was on the decision desk.
All right. Calling Arizona
when challenged,
for Biden.
Because I think people came and said, you can't do this, you can't do this. No, the data's there. And then for days after, the data's there. It's a good call.
All right. So he makes some sense.
Then they fired him, of course. Yeah. But we know what he's going to do because he wrote a piece for Jonah Goldberg's The Dispatch. where he says the January 6th committee and me, why I'm testifying. So, we have an idea.
I'm just laughing. We're so old. There are people working for Jonah Goldberg now.
Yeah.
Like he
in
was
America, we once thought of political courage as being willing. It's like, people working for Kyle Rittenhouse,
Yeah,
that's how,
right.
That's how old, we're getting. In America, we once thought of political courage as being willing to do something at one's own expense. At the pointy end of that consideration are instances where people risk their lives or freedom to do the right thing. But here, thankfully, we have in recent decades mostly thought of political courage in terms of electoral risks, which is interesting because he's going to position Cheney versus whatever Bill Stepien's doing. Gerald Ford taking the hit for pardoning Nixon. Barack Obama refusing the demands of Democrats to prosecute members of the Bush administration. Remember, he's a conservative. That's why we revere courageous leadership. A politician who will sacrifice his or her ambition or grasp on power in order to serve the people is rare and essential. Washington, Lincoln, etc. And we name states and cities for them.
Yeah.
I don't know if the share of politicians capable of actual courage really is lower today than when I first started covering them full-time 24 years ago. Some of what I see as declining character in our leaders may be a byproduct of nostalgia, but holy crocano, people, we sure are living in a political age of desperate, shallow ambition, what David Waldman might call candidate in a box. And the cowardice is inevitable. No longer is it sufficient to help yourself. You have to hurt the other side. Which brings us to the investigation into then President Donald Trump's effort to steal a second term. This is the conservative guy. The efforts of some Republicans in Congress to vandalize the Constitution to help him. The sacking of the Capitol by a mob summoned to serve the ambitions. Forget Lincoln and Washington. This is behavior unworthy of Nixon.
Yes.
What Trump and his gang did in the 2020 election and its aftermath is a big historical moment for our country, far bigger than the Watergate scandal we still discuss 50 years later. Monstrous self-interest and craven lust for power, evinced by the behavior of many in the Republican Party, demanded a response for real statesmanship and courage. So, it's pretty sharp stuff from a conservative. A single short article against Trump for trying to disrupt the transfer of power, including by sending an angry mob to the Capitol, would have been very hard to vote against by Republicans who hadn't been part of the power grab. This is where he gets all Republican-y. If such an article had been passed by the House, I believe Trump would have been convicted and removed from office. Instead, Pelosi put 3 cable news stalwarts and sharp-eyed partisans in charge of drafting the articles: Raskin, Ciccolini, Ted Lieu. What the House voted on a week after was not designed to make it easy for Republicans to get to yay. So bullshit. But, again, you got to remember who the audience is. He's writing for conservatives in Jonah Goldberg's Dispatch.
Yeah, all right.
So that always happens. Whenever you look to a conservative, you have to look at the bulwark or a clear anti-Trump side if you just want straight, this is what I think. If you're writing otherwise for National Review or some other conservative thing, you have to throw in some red meat about how Pelosi's bad, in order to get your point across. And it's acceptable because you want that point to get across to the audience that he's talking to.
Yes.
But I just want to give you an idea of, what he might say today.
It's not a bad thing to go, to play it for, every Republican knows that there's a basic charge on which he should have been impeached, convicted, and barred from office forever. I guess if you can get everybody to agree on that. But you said instead
of magazine, so I can't do it, and it's your fault. I mean, that's the basic line.
Right. Okay. Well, it's nice that somewhere buried in there is, he was absolutely impeachable and convictable.
Yeah, the problem is you guys, because you ruined it by having people like Raskin and Schiff who were articulate.
I mean, I don't know. There wasn't that much daylight between what he's asking for and what they got. I mean, he's just guilty
but you got to do that. And then basically he and Stepiano both say, look, we don't want to be here. We're here because we were subpoenaed.
And we believe in America.
Exactly.
Or something. All right.
So speaking of believing in America, Just Security has a nice, they had this nice capsule of the different teams. Remember we went over that, the blue, the gold, the green, the red, the purple.
Brown.
Right? So obviously the whole thing is a pride event, which is great. The January 6th hearings, a criminal evidence tracker. So this is a new thing that they have, a new resource where they're basically laying out, here are the specific criminal codes for those of you who are there. And if I recall correctly from our last discussion, that little squiggly S thing
has a name.
It
does. Stapien. No. Star. I don't remember. Yeah, I forget what it is, too. Oh,
yeah. Anyway, we look at 18 USC squiggle thing 371.
Squiggle thing. Okay.
Criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. And so, as a federal judge has already found, and as some of the authors explain in a new report, there's substantial evidence of a likely crime here. The committee laid out a 7-part plan orchestrated by Trump, and remember, that's part of the plan, engaging in an effort to spread false and fraudulent information. That's part of today's hearing. Corruptly planning to replace the acting attorney general with Trump apologist Jeffrey Clark. That's, I think, Wednesdays. And that's when, the DOJ people will testify. Pressuring Pence to refuse to count or delay the counting of certified electoral votes. Pressuring state election officials. Instructing Republicans in multiple states to create false electoral slates, summoning and assembling a violent mob, and as the violence was underway, doing nothing about it. Those are the 7 things that this committee is going to specifically look at. And it's amazing when you step back and look at it. We haven't had a chance to speak since the Thursday night hearings. Yeah. But you had this compelling overview of what was going on, which was beautifully orchestrated. They made a large hearing room in the Capitol, which is the biggest one short of the floors. Oh, yes. Looked small and intimate because of the way that it was done, and that's why they hired an ABC news guy to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, they had Liz Cheney do most of the presenting, and everything that she did was just like the guy writing at Jonah Goldberg's Dispatch, was geared toward Republicans. Liz Cheney gets on and says, this is terrible. It's the worst thing we've seen. We've had great and venerated presidents in this space. Remember, one of the things is they're having the trial, which is to say the committee on the coup, in the place and spot where people came in and tried to pull off the coup. That doesn't happen. Unless you have a shooting in a courthouse, you generally don't have the trial in the place where the shooting was.
Generally, yes, that's true.
And everybody who's there was part of it. It's a weird, vibe that goes through all of this and makes it hard to do bullshit when, this is the room that guy shot at me.
Yeah. Right, true. And I was thinking about the location thing the other day when, I guess, when the Capitol police officer was testifying, and I think he used the word carnage at some point. Yes, and just thinking about Trump's weirdo inauguration speech about how all the carnage was going to stop. Carnage. Yeah, but stopping right here, right now. And it's like, but right here is actually where the carnage was 4 years later. Very interesting.
So Liz Cheney goes and even when she was invoking previous presidents.
Yes.
Right? And you're talking about, this is the place where great presidents lie in state.
Yeah, not this one, please. Thank you.
Presidents like Lincoln, Reagan, Eisenhower, Republicans all. She didn't mention any great. I mean, every part of her discussion
good reminder.
Was like, I'm a Republican. We're doing Republican things. Let's honor Republicans. Republicans ought to be on our side. And they're not. And but she talked about shame. And every one of you who isn't doing this ought to be ashamed of yourselves.
Good.
It was great.
That's a nice presentation. Of course, don't bother writing and say, but Liz Cheney's a rotten. We know. She's
we know terrible. Who she is, right?
And she's currently terrible as well, doing her best to make sure that the committee's work doesn't get around to, I understand, blocking every attempt to bring it around to, say, Ginny Thomas and other Republicans. The ones that are ensnared are the ones she's happy to throw under the bus. There are several she's protecting, or allegedly the case. So we're aware of that. That's true. She's still Liz Cheney. Sorry. But she's doing a good job with this. What else are we supposed to say? This was a good presentation. I'm glad people heard it. I wanted to say those things. I would also have thrown in Republicans suck, but that's me and not her. That's all right. By the way, breaking news, allegedly, CNN claims that Bill Stapien now says, I'm not going. How do you like that?
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Maybe that's why he was on the docket, for him to chicken out and leave an empty chair and just say, see what's going on? You see what's happening? They're just not appearing. They're saying they will and then chickening out. That means something, everybody. Or maybe they didn't plan it. I don't know. But it could be very dramatic on TV in an hour.
Right. So we'll have we won't have him, and
maybe
I don't know how important he was, but
we'll
it'll be interesting to see. In his absence, this is the data that we have.
Yeah.
So that'll be quite interesting.
Also, in breaking news, the symbol is called a Silk Crow.
A Silk Crow, the double S, the section symbol.
And when I went to look it up, I mean, I got the answer also via Twitter from Skip Bitter on our KITM hashtag.
So the funky P is a Philcrow?
Yeah, it is. It's a Pilcrow. Not a Philcrow, but a Pilcrow. It's right there in the little Wikipedia thing. I didn't actually click on the Wikipedia thing yet. What Google shows me is over at Wikipedia. And Silkrow, double S for sections, and Pilcrow, that's a double P, but backwards for the paragraph thing.
All right, there we go.
Like that?
So 18 U.S.C. Silkrow, 1512, obstruction of Congress, likely crime by the same federal judge. And then thirdly, they go over the Georgia state crime, and the core of the possible offense is Trump's January 2nd, 2021 tape-recorded demand to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. He just wants to find 1,100 and 780 votes.
Right.
Okay. The thing is, and I've seen all this stuff. Well, we don't know his state of mind. We don't know whether or not he knew he lost. What difference does it make? I didn't know whether it was wrong or not when I threw that brick into the bank window and jumped in the window and then opened the vault and took money out. I didn't know that was wrong.
Was that wrong? Well, should I not have done that?
You shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Well, right. I don't know. It does make a certain difference elsewhere, but not here at these hearings, for one thing.
There's this lawyer I really like who's a really good guy, and we're friends on Twitter, and we talked about this. And, he was saying, well, I don't know. If you can't prove his state of mind, I don't know how you possibly could, convict him. And, I said to him, look, it's a lawyer's job, and I am not a lawyer, and I don't play one on the internet. It is a lawyer's job to put the perpetrator's facts in the best possible light. Mm-hmm. And it's up to the jury and say, nah, that's bullshit. Yeah. Nice try, but no.
I'm doing this today. Well, that's the job. And I mean, it's, and that's all there is to it is they'll try and do that. But I mean, it's an awfully difficult thing to do ordinarily. And it's a tremendously difficult thing to do when you're like, well, he wasn't in his right mind, or he didn't believe that, or something. But he was also president of the United States at the time. Yes. So.
Well, if he wasn't in his right mind, that's why we were talking about Section 25.
Right. 25th Amendment.
25th Amendment.
Mike Pompeo chatting about
Silkrow 25.
True. You could use it. Well, okay. No one ever does. They just say 25th
or Pilcrow or whatever. Right. But the point is, Betsy DeVos claims that she wanted to do a Section 8 on him, which is also known as Section 25. And Mike Pence said, no, you can't. I won't do it.
Thanks a lot. He was trying to hang you. Well, that's going to
be part of the story that comes out, right? So if he's not in his right mind, how could you possibly avoid impeaching?
Well, they won't be saying, it wasn't that he was in his right mind. It's just that he was in his right mind and strongly believed this wrong thing.
But he was in his right mind for everything else.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you pull that one off?
I don't know. Well, pleading's in the alternative. You can
anyway, Sarah Longwell notes, the reason you're seeing so many conservative ink types squirm out of nobody cares about this takes is because everything you see and hear at these hearings is evidence of what Republicans and conservatives are willing to tolerate in the name of tribal politics. And that's why we're talking about this here. Well, what rationale can I give you in order to get out of this? And we know the usual ones. Right? Just like we know the usual ones about, the gun compromise that we came out over the weekend is terrific, and we're all for it, say Republicans. And you got to thank us because we're doing the right thing. Of course, it's all in the language, and it may be that we wanted to do this, and then at the last minute you said the instead of it, and so, we can't. Sorry.
All right. Well,
we'll see. By the way, that's also a big story. Oh. And I'm an incrementalist, so I am fine with them getting the first thing in 26 years on the table, on the books, and signed by Biden, which isn't a done deal yet. But the fact that they have 10 Republicans agreeing to it is a huge step in the right direction. And the fact that it doesn't go far enough This is America. The older people who have been trying to do this for years say, great, we got something. And the younger people who want everything all at once say it's not enough. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's exactly where we ought to be in this argument.
There's a lot, obviously, left to be desired on a number of fronts, including the over-reliance on, mental health. Something. But I know.
Right. I say it's wonderful. Thank the Republicans. Get the bill signed, and the day after, then you can tell everybody why it sucks.
That's true. Yeah. They should put this one on the books if they've really got their 10. And it's still just a framework at this point. Plenty of room for the 10 Republicans to run away.
And there's room for more than the 10. But I believe, and I didn't go through this in detail on every one of them, that the 10 who signed on either aren't up for re-election this year or are retiring, I think.
That's very likely the case.
Like, I didn't see Murkowski.
Yeah.
She's a potential get.
Yeah, I guess that's true, too.
But she's up for re-election.
More breaking news on the breaking news from before. Stepien bailing out. Apparently, well, at least the Goldie Taylor's claim is his wife is in labor. That's a different story. If that's the case.
Why isn't she coming?
That's true, right? Just do it right here. Why not?
You can bring her. It's okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, at any rate, that would be a different story. To say
that'd be great. Then we can have a live birth right there on national television.
Yeah.
And then Republicans can abandon the child as soon as the kid is born.
That's likely what would happen. Well, look, we honor all life or something like that. Well, okay, that's news. I don't know where the news came from, except to say Goldie Taylor, and she's got a blue check mark on the line. That'll just go away if it turns out that she's not in labor. She was never even pregnant.
After the break.
She just put a pillow under her. Okay. Well, all right. We'll find out whether that's really the case or not, and certainly they'll say so at 10 or 11 o'clock. If that's really the case, I'm sure they'll make mention of that. And wish him good luck.
Good luck, absolutely.
Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Bill Stepien's wife's labor is over. That was very quick. Child's been delivered. And all healthy. And let's see. Let's show up at the hearings. This will be very interesting. All right. Well, I hope that excuse pans out. That is a different story. I had a whole narrative to go with here, but all right. Could be something totally different. Unless it's all a lie. There's a My Pillow.
So since we're starting the next half hour semi-fresh.
Yes.
Let's just do some lightning round stuff. I want to talk about it because I'm afraid I'll forget to talk about it, but there's a lovely article by Thomas Lecaque, if you can think of lovely to describe horrible things. Patriot Front and the next stage of the culture war, the militias have a plan. This is in reference to the Idaho arrest of 31 neo-Nazis and white supremacists who were going to try to break up a pride celebration.
Yeah.
And that's
something.
They got picked up for conspiring to riot.
Yes. And doing it just the way they've done it a number of events too. I think their plans may have been a little more violent or sinister perhaps this time, but they very frequently, this is one of those militias that all dress up the same in a uniform, not camouflage, but these guys are khaki pants, blue shirts, tan hats, and then they wear those white like neck gaiters up over their face, so it makes them look like the Blue Man Group except white. I'm sure they would be happy to be the White Man Group. That's what they are. And then they all get they were all in the back of a U-Haul truck, which is very low rent, honestly.
Yeah.
But
the whole group is very low
rent.
But they're from all over the country.
They
weren't
had the
just
sticks
Idaho
and
people.
the shields. Oh, right. Very few of them were from in town, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, anyway. But many from out of state. And they had the shields and the sticks. I've been wondering for a long time why police allow people to show up with armor and shields and sticks.
And zip ties.
Yeah. This time, though, they got the police say they were tipped off. There was rumor early on that they had an informant in the group. Then they said, what am I telling this to the press for, I guess, and changed their mind and said they didn't. But
they said somebody at a hotel saw them get into the van.
Fine. Honestly.
This is weird. All these guys
they don't
with
have
masks
cars.
are getting into the van.
Yeah. That's odd. Being piled in there is odd. By the way, that's human trafficking. Let me just add that. And everything that somebody also made this fantastic observation of how closely the story actually hews to the other projection tale of small-town America suddenly finding themselves under siege from busloads or truckloads full of Antifa super soldiers. The true fact of the matter is that it is the right wing packing their people into these vehicles and trucking them all over creation for the purpose of violent confrontation.
From the Bulwark story, 31 Patriot Front members from across the country have been charged with conspiracy to riot, including Thomas Rousseau, who founded the group in 2017 after breaking off from Vanguard America. Now, Vanguard might not be a familiar name to you, but you should know them from Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville.
Yes, where they were wearing white shirts instead. Now, these are the blue-shirted guys. Totally
right. Vanguard
different.
members made their neo-Nazi ideology unmissable with chants of blood and soil. Rousseau was among them, but he broke off to escape negative associations following the murder of Heather Heyer.
Well,
so as an offshoot of an older neo-Nazi group, Patriot Front locates itself in a long history of neo-Nazism in America, from George Lincoln Rockwell, Aryan Nation, Second Klan, Father Coughlin, Original America First movement, Charles Lindbergh. They trace themselves, all of that. So they advocate a mix of standard right-wing extremist ideas, and its membership is fairly limited. But what makes them significant is their media savvy. White supremacist propaganda distribution nearly doubled in the U.S. in 2020, and Patriot Front alone was responsible for about 80% of it.
Really? Well, hopefully one of these 31 is the chief communications officer, and he's in jail and stays there.
Right. So a lot of the times the marches are used for recruitment purposes, and the Patriot Front's distinctive outfits are deliberate. They make it easy to poke fun at them, but they're serious, organized, and dangerous.
Well, yeah. They weren't super dangerous when they opened that truck, I must say. All hands up when the truck back went up. But, hey, that's the power of the AR-15 in the hands of the police.
Right. And while these are the groups we should be monitoring and worrying about, as attacks on minority communities once again ramp up, the problem goes beyond white supremacists and militias. So Dylan Oz of the Steadfast Baptist Church in Watauga, Texas.
Oh, boy. I don't know.
Opened Pride Month by saying the government should execute gay people. They should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. That's what God teaches, and that's what the Bible says.
And here's your tax exemption, sir.
So, yeah, I mean, this is an issue. It's a problem, and, nobody should be making fun of this, except for making fun of the specific individuals who, got doxxed, which is great.
Yeah. All right. Oh, yes. They unmasked all the people after they arrested them, and there were lots of activists around and regular people around, just like, what's this crazy thing happening? And taking pictures of people as the masks came off. And, boy, those guys were not happy.
And, glad they weren't happy. But, again, wanted to make sure that we mentioned that.
Yes.
Another big thing that happened is that France finally had their electoral legislative day, that is to say the election for the...
What is this called? An election.
The election for the legislature, whatever they call it.
The
district
legislature.
Runoffs in about, Danielle says, runoffs in half of French districts are duels between the left coalition and Macron's coalition. If you recall how this works, you got to get 50%. If you don't, top two go to a runoff. So just about everybody's going to a runoff. Just about all the districts have that rule. And in about, Matthew Gallard puts numbers on it, which is great. So you're talking about Macron's group versus the left coalition. 265 of those districts are going to have that in the runoff. Okay, and then the next largest number is between Macron's group and the right wing, and that's 110. And then the next is between the left and the right. That's only 60.
Like Twix.
The conservatives, who are to the left of the right.
Okay.
Right. The center right just got clobbered.
Oh.
The traditional, Gaullist parties, for example, they got clobbered. So Macron's center group and the left coalition basically are going to fight it out as to who winds up having control of the legislature. And the vote was like just about a tie between those two groups. And then the right wing Le Pen people came in third, and then the traditional conservatives came in last. And one of the interesting, and I can't remember his name, but there was an Eric character who was even more to the right of Le Pen that got knocked out fairly early in the presidential election. He lost for running for the legislature. So that was of interest. So the right wing didn't do all that well. The left wing did very well. Macron's party did very well, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yes, may we.
Okay.
Yes.
In terms of the bipartisan deal on the framework for gun legislation, which still has to be written, this is Chris Murphy, my senator, who was a lead person on the Democratic side, and who has been leading this for like a decade. So he's got a list of some of the things it includes. Major funding to help states pass and implement crisis intervention orders, which is to say red flag laws.
Yes.
To temporarily take dangerous weapons away from people who pose a danger to others or themselves. The good news is they can help in certain circumstances. The bad news is when you give money to states, red states, it's like tobacco money. Oh, thank you. We'll use this to teach people not to smoke, or maybe lower taxes instead. What's the difference?
Yeah.
So you can't control it once you give it to the states, but at least the money's there. Billions in new funding for mental health and school safety, including money for the national build-out of community mental health clinics. This is so needed that if you're going to tack it onto this bill and say it's part of our gun response, fine. The money's needed anyway. So that's a win-win. Close the boyfriend loophole so that no domestic abuser, spouse, or serious dating partner can buy a gun if they're convicted of abuse against their partner. That would be a good thing. First ever federal law against gun trafficking and straw purchasing, which is good. Enhanced background checks for under 21 and a short pause to conduct the check. So they couldn't raise the age completely. You can't buy it if you're under 21. But what they can do is enhance background check and make it a waiting period.
Well, yeah, like I said, they make it a 3-year waiting period.
Yeah, but, again, people didn't think that would get in the bill, but Murphy was pretty good at getting that into the bill.
All right, good.
So that's one of the surprises. Clarification of the laws regarding who needs to register as a licensed gun dealer.
Yes.
Technical thing, but as we know, process matters. Will this bill do everything we need to end our nation's gun violence? Of course not. Yep. But it's real, it's meaningful, and it breaks a 30-year logjam. So that's Murphy's view. I'm with him.
All right, yeah. I mean, look, what am I going to say? No to it? I'll take it.
I'll take it.
More work.
And then, the day after, we'll start talking about how bad it is and it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah. We all know
it passes. After it passes.
The reason
before.
we're all angry about it not going far is you should remember we know what
so
we're
where
up
are the votes?
against.
Tell me where the votes are.
We know what we're up against, and look, take what you can get. It's not, and there is the thing. I guess some pushback. I guess you could say, well, if you allow the Republicans to pass this thing, then they'll say, well, see, we're done. We washed our hands of it. We don't need to do anything else. But they would do that if they defeated it. Don't worry,
there'll be other
too.
incidents that will make them come back to the table.
I guess there's that too. Also, you absolutely have to take whatever you can get. They've done a masterful job on the other side, making it seem like nothing is possible. And really, honestly, just breaking that is worth something.
Absolutely.
So, okay. You don't have to give up. You don't have to say that's all you're ever going to do. And I'm sure Murphy would never say such a thing.
Right. So let's get back to the January 6th coup hearings, which is what they are, because I think, again, they're going to be dominating the news. Wait, and here's another, this is from last night, really so you can't call it breaking, but it's still news.
Auto golpe, yes.
Yeah.
You've told us.
Late last week, Mark Meadows' secretary informed him that she's hired her own counsel and will now be cooperating with the committee.
Oh, okay. Well,
and ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you've ever worked in an office, But I promise you, your secretary knows everything about you. Everything.
Yeah.
Things you didn't even know that the secretary knew about you. They know.
Yeah. All right. And she's getting her own counsel. That's good news, I think.
Let's see.
For
Hutchison said Meadows was warned of potential violence before January 6th, and he burned papers in his office weeks after the 2020 election.
Yeah, that's a good
She's
one.
also said Meadows told aides of Trump's expressing a positive view of hanging Mike Pence.
Right. So
Twitter says never get a secretary mad at you. This is true.
Right. When's National Secretary's Day? That's now
whatever day she
assistant.
testifies.
Right. Every day is Secretary's Day. If you were going to testify. All right.
Jay Rosen had a really interesting piece. It's not a piece. What he did is he screen capped the New York Times saying news analysis during the January 6th hearing, Donald Trump was depicted as a would-be autocrat willing to shred the Constitution to hang on to power at all costs. That's their summary of the January 6th hearing on Thursday night.
Yes, I think Peter
And
Baker.
Jay Rosen took a red pen to that and crossed off depicted and penciled in revealed.
Aha. Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And you know what? I mean, that's exactly
why
what the
Peter
Times
Baker
does
did it that
wrong.
way. Yeah, that's true. Good spot because, everybody else was saying, look at that. Ho-ho. Wait a second. Oh, it's not great, is it? Oh, look. You're right.
It's great, but it could be
great. Keen
great.
eye for that. Yeah, I think it was a Peter Baker story. That
Of course.
wording sounds familiar, and I'm pretty sure that's where I read it.
Meanwhile, Steve Bannon is fuming, says Ron Filipowski, about a criminal indictment of Trump. He's got the video that says it. I dare Merrick Garland to take that crap last night and try to indict Donald Trump because we're going to win in November. We're going to impeach you and everybody around you.
Well, duh. If you win,
screw the White House. We're going to impeach you all.
No, you aren't.
So
And
he was really happy about all of that.
Yeah. We're going to dissolve you in a vat of acid. How
Yeah,
about
he
that?
was in a good mood. We're just going to pour water on you and you're going to melt.
Yeah, it could happen. He's really a piece of
not a
work.
well person.
What can I tell you? Yeah.
This is Susan Glasser, Peter Baker's wife, writing in The New Yorker.
Yes.
Dishonor Trump, because they wrote the book together. Dishonor Trump's and his party's is the real January 6th takeaway. She's got much better political takes than her husband. Liz Cheney, defying the GOP, offered a searing indictment of the former president at Thursday's hearing. And really, it was all about honor. This was the quote that I couldn't remember. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain. She was speaking to Republicans.
Okay.
And it's true.
Yes. May it come soon.
Right? Greg Sargent following up. Why Liz Cheney's seditious conspiracy talk is awful for Trump. Not long into the riveting first hearing. And it was riveting. Oh, by the way, did you watch it? Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did.
Your family let you watch it?
I had to watch it on my laptop, but yeah. No one turned off my laptop. That's right. In a parking lot outside of a closed Safeway. Yeah. No, I got to watch it on my laptop with the sound low.
It was good.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed the first hour considerably more than the second. But
you know, because Cheney was basically doing a narrative, and there's your example of why narrative is more important than anything else. Although
I liked that.
The second hour did have things that obviously were important. The purpose of the police officer, who is obviously chosen because she's a white female, telling the story of carnage, which you already referred to.
Right.
It gives you an idea
carnage
of
for the French listeners.
You know, how effective that was in terms of getting in your head, even if you don't remember the specifics.
Right.
And what she did is she reminded all of the people in that room where it happened. Mm-hmm. She reminded all the people who were there when it happened.
Yes.
What you felt the day it happened.
Right.
And so, get into this because, you know, we're going to bring you back and get ready for it.
Okay.
And it was pretty searing for those who were there.
It was. And the room, by the way, for those interested, the Cannon Caucus Room. It's in the Cannon House Office Building.
Which is a fairly large room compared to other hearing rooms.
It's where they allow, it's where they have caucus meetings, and they need to fit half the House in a single room for a big meeting. That's the one.
So somebody on Twitter said to me,
they need to make room for press.
The staging of this was really good. They picked this intimate little room to do this. And I said, that's not an intimate little room. It's like TV outside of the floor of the House of the Senate. It's the biggest room you could find in the Capitol.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's across the street even. It's not even in the Capitol. It's in the Cannon House office building, but it's, connected by tunnels, for one thing. But, yeah, that's the largest room. I mean, maybe the Ways and Means is the biggest normal hearing room, but and that's not far from there either. But, yeah, they did a good job. TV makes everything look kind of... It's very weird. Sometimes it can make a small space look huge. It can make a huge space look small.
Right. So getting to the first and second, because you're wondering, well, what did the staging do? Actually, there's a whole list of some of the things that the staging did, if you want to get into that. And I actually put that aside somewhere. This is Eamon Javers talking about this. There were several tactical and presentation decisions that made last night's January 6th committee hearing so effective. And I'll just give that to you because I didn't include that in my list because I wasn't sure we were going to talk about it. Huh. They dispensed with the dumb every member gets 5 minutes rule, which is the thing that makes you hate committee meetings.
Right. They didn't do it that way. Good.
Congressional committees cling to the format, and it makes many hearings incoherent. It was bipartisan with Liz Cheney. They let the staff take a lead in questioning. That is to say, they did that through the videos. Yeah. Like of the first thing they had up there was Bill Barr saying, I told him it was bullshit.
Yep.
And that was really effective as a start. Seamless integration of audio and video. They broke news. They teased to more news. They introduced new characters like Carolyn Edwards, who was the officer who testified in a riveting fashion. Gets knocked down, knocked out, gets up, goes right back to work, contrasting and comparing, let's say, with other people. And then, of course, Liz Cheney named names. One of the things that was most intriguing about that first night is that, and Republicans were asking for pardons like Scott Perry.
Yeah. And now everybody asking
I didn't expect her to name the names today, but she did. Perry got all upset about it, but Raskin and Schiff said, no, we have the proof.
Okay, good.
We'll present it at a later time, but, they knew they were doing the wrong thing. Talking about establishing that it was illegal and establishing a state of mind, if that's your thing, because the people who know what Silkros and Pilcrows are, feel like you have to establish somebody's state of mind to prove something. And so if that's your thing, asking for a pardon is evidence of, I know I'm guilty.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I certainly.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be asking for a pardon. Have you asked for a pardon? I haven't asked for a pardon.
I have. I mean, I just figured I would. Oh, yeah. That I do all the time.
I do that all the time.
Pardon me.
Not this one.
Yeah.
Anyway, the lighting and camera angles were warmer and closer than typical hearings. It gave the whole thing a welcoming and intimate vibe, which is the opposite of the star chamber effect you could have if you did it otherwise. And he ends by saying, I've seen a lot of congressional hearings over the years. As a hearing, this was by far the most effective I've ever seen.
Oh, well, all right. It's really testament to how ineffective most hearings are.
Yeah.
But okay. Still, they took the opportunity. They could have had a disaster and done it. Well, let's just put what we usually do on TV. No.
Right. Now, today, they're going to do the big lie thing. And you talked about the fact that Stepien won't be there because his wife is having a baby. Congratulations to them. But this is a piece about the other person who's going to testify, Chris Starwell. And I got this from West Virginia Metro News.
Yeah.
Right, because everything is local.
Oh.
Like, Florida resident Donald Trump did this or that, if you're looking at a Florida paper. West Virginia's Chris Stirewalt to testify before January 6th committee on Monday. Stirewalt was on the decision desk at Fox News on election night, calling the key state of Arizona and its 11 electoral votes for Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. Since then, widespread reporting is focused on the angry reaction by Trump. Stirewalt, who said he was not solely responsible for the call, split with Fox in early 2021, which is to say I think they fired him.
Yeah, he wasn't harassing enough women.
But again, he has his own piece in the Bulwark talking about why he's there. So, again, he's going to testify about the fact that it was just wrong. Everything was wrong.
Okay.
And so we're looking forward to that.
He can have twice as long if he wants it today.
Yeah. And let's see what else we have here. We have talking about the fact that the charge of seditious conspiracy, says Greg Sargent, requires prosecutors to prove that at least two people conspired to use force to overthrow the government, oppose its authority, or subvert the execution of U.S. law. Charges have been brought against some of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers for that. And by floating the notion at Thursday's hearing, the committee seems to be telegraphing that it intends to build a case that Trump, his co-conspirators, or both also engaged in seditious conspiracy.
Well, they did.
Right? And so just to follow up on that theme, the Associated Press, not known for, going overboard, January 6 panelists, enough evidence has been uncovered to indict Trump. Members of the House committee investigating the Capitol riot said Sunday they've uncovered enough evidence for the Justice Department to consider an unprecedented criminal indictment against Trump for seeking to overturn the results of the 2020 election. The committee announced that Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, is among the witnesses scheduled to testify that focuses on Trump's effort to spread his lies. Again, that was written before the...
before his wife became pregnant.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, poof. Hey.
And then Stepien was subpoenaed for his public testimony. They may have him on tape. I don't know what they're going to do. But we'll see.
Yeah, maybe. That's true.
We'll see in
could
about
roll
10
some
minutes.
tape. Right? They got an hour before, and it might take an hour to get around to the witnesses.
Right. But, the fact that they're saying that is good. This is a piece in the Washington Post, how the January 6th hearing played out on the pro-Trump web. Ironically, online accounts that helped organize the insurrection tried to debunk the evidence.
Oh. Well,
ironically. It's not ironically. It's self-preservation.
Yeah, not...
Trump and the rally had nothing to do with the Capitol breach, said the Trump War Room, a Twitter account once run by his re-election campaign. On pro-Trump channels on the chat service Telegram, supporters ridiculed the hearing as overly scripted and a partisan circus, if they mentioned it at all. It's really hard to debunk it but not mention it.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson had that problem.
How would you do that?
20 million people watched at least. That doesn't include people who streamed it, so it's much more than that. And Tucker Carlson gets about 3 million, just, for comparison. But he did his entire show without commercial because he was afraid if they went to a commercial, somebody might actually turn the hearings on.
Yep. It was very clever of them to do.
Well, it's very clever highlighting the fact that Fox News is completely complicit. We talked about this on Thursday before the hearing, but Fox News is the cable version, and then there's Fox outlets, which are broadcast version, and they have a much bigger audience, and they carried it for the most part, unless you were a Sinclair station. So basically, a lot of people saw this, and then they were trying. Well, 20 million, that's nothing. It's a large number. It's actually a lot. It's about what the Sunday Night Football gets. Well, it's only as much as Sunday Night Football. Sunday Night Football is very popular, actually.
Yeah, right. Even though they're thinking they're boycotting it, but yeah, it's and we know why they're not showing it on Fox News. And I saw somebody on Twitter say it very succinctly that Fox isn't airing the hearings because their top news personalities are co-conspirators. You can't air that.
Right.
We're in trouble for it.
Right. So key to prosecuting Trump will be proving his corrupt intent. The lie, and they use corrupt intent a lot, just as often as they use seditious conspiracy. The liar will claim innocence by insisting he believed it. The more evidence that he knew perfectly well he was peddling, bullshit.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
That's a quote from our Bill Barr guy.
I just want to say
the harder it will be for him to evade the consequences of his actions. Even the most practiced con artists get caught out eventually. So that's from E.J. Dion's analysis of what's going on.
I'm happy to hear it.
Right. So who should care? Why should you care? It's old news. In describing the war scene, the carnage, the chaos at January 6th, Caroline Edwards, a U.S. Capitol Police officer badly injured, provided the antidote to the poisonous indifference. And that's why hers was important, he says. So basically, that's a pretty much summary wrap of what happened. I think it was compelling. I think it was important. I think a lot of people watched. Now, Walter Shapiro, who's like a My Generation reporter, noted that one of the things that happened that isn't happening this time with the Watergate hearings is that the hearings were during the day and a lot of people couldn't watch, but PBS broadcast them in its entirety at night, which won't be happening now. On the other hand, now we have YouTube, so you don't need it.
Yes, that's true. They have that role covered. But you got to go and seek it out, and I guess nowadays.
Well, if you're 75, you're not gonna.
Right. Probably not. And PBS might be the place you were going to see it, but I don't know. Such a fragmented.
PBS is neutral.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess, look, they got to sell tote bags. If you turn it on, Pride and Prejudice will be on probably, but well, all right. You can check it out. You can find it elsewhere. Other people, I don't think anybody's going to rebroadcast it in its entirety, but I guess maybe late night C-SPAN might.
Yeah. But if you want to watch it, you can either go to C-SPAN because they do record it,
right.
And that's where I watched it when I wanted to see it a second time. Or you could go to YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, there's lots of options. It's a very fragmented television space these days.
Doesn't matter where you saw it, so long as you saw it.
Yeah, but any channel that chose to reshow it is instead of being one of 5, perhaps, channel options at the time in 1974. Now it's one of 1,000. So,
right. And the last thing I want to mention before I go is that you will recall that Proud Boys and Oath Keepers are going to be on trial.
Yes.
For seditious conspiracy.
They are.
Okay. And what people don't realize, but should realize, is that a lot of the members of the Proud Boys are actually on the Miami-Dade County Republican Executive Committee.
Oh, well.
I mean, they're part and parcel of the Republican Party in Florida.
That's a pretty good point.
A lot of the people who are going to be tried are from Florida, so watch for that.
Yeah. I guess I should also note in that, on that note, I'll note another thing is that people were saying, I saw someone reporting, apparently Proud Boys membership actually up post January 6th. They're getting a lot of publicity.
Well, that's what they claimed. They claimed that during the hearing.
And also they were busy disrupting an event yesterday, I think down in Florida, where they were having one of these drag queen story hours in the library, and they decided that they were going to burst in and cause trouble. So
Juan Carlos Blanes is an election attorney, and he had a tweet. I publicly call on my friend Senator Rene Garcia to move to remove all Proud Boys from the Miami-Dade County Republican Executive Committee.
Well, yeah, why not? You should be calling for that. I usually call for doesn't get anything, but just be aware. It's a good point to make in the last second of the first hour. Thanks, Greg. They're not done. We're not finished with these guys. They're still arresting people like them in Idaho. So, all right, we'll check in with you again on Wednesday, and have fun watching. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg has sent me on the way out the door, the metaphorical door, the Skype door, the clip from Talking Points memo that I had referenced early on in the show. This under the headline of "Something Doesn't Fit." Let's see, and it's the fake pregnancy. No, I don't think that's it. But sent me the text. Oops, I opened it and then closed it again, and now I got to search around and see if I can recover it. But he says, "Here's an interesting nugget," and I guess it's coming from, I don't know whether it's coming from Josh Marshall himself in his editor's blog, or I mean, can I open the thing and find out at least? Oh, it's a members only article. It is Josh Marshall though. But it was shared by TPM member, I guess, Greg. So. Thanks, and we got that's why it's okay. When it came through, the URL had share token on it. I was like, what kind of, is he sending me some sort of non-fungible token thing? No, it's the ability to read a members only article by Josh Marshall. And here's the interesting nugget. Let's get to the nugget that puts an added context to Bill Stepien, I don't know how he says it, appearance before the January 6th committee. He is working as an advisor / consultant to the campaign of Wyoming Republican Harriet Hageman, the woman running against Liz Cheney in the House primary in Wyoming. And noting parenthetically that Wyoming, of course, has a single representative in the House because there's only like 10 people in Wyoming, which is why a bunch of California Democrats should relocate to Wyoming and take over the state. But anyway, normally this wouldn't be surprising. A top Republican operative might be working with any number of Republican candidates, but Hageman isn't any Republican. Her candidacy is inextricably tied to the big lie, and in fact, it's run almost entirely as a Trump campaign proxy. And of course, Cheney is literally front and center in the committee's work. In theory, you get summoned to testify and you testify. You swear to tell the truth, and you tell the truth. It doesn't matter if someone is on the committee is working for a political opponent. Wait a minute, no. It wouldn't matter if someone on the committee is working for... No, someone on the committee is a political opponent. Anyway, but that doesn't quite capture what's going on here, either for Cheney or Stapien's loyalty to the big lie. I doubt the committee wants a hostile witness, or if they did, they'd want it to be someone big. Something doesn't fit. Well, it's apparently... I know it doesn't fit. It's his wife's pre-maternity wardrobe. But soon it will fit again, I'm sure, if that whole story... I have no clue whatsoever whether or not that story is true or not. I don't really have any... I mean, Goldie Taylor might... I don't know. She must have read something. Because she's not the type to just be like, make up something out of whole cloth. Oh yeah, and his wife's pregnant and she's due this very moment. So, I doubt that very much. But then again, they are weirdos and liars, and there were probably a lot of My Pillows lying around. Could she be faking it? Well, it's not for us to determine. So how do you like that? Anyway, now we know what doesn't fit, and it is kind of strange, and absent the whole wife thing. Yeah, I mean, well, that's what I was talking about. Why host a hostile witness when you have limited television time to deal with? They're just pains in the neck, and they draw everything out, and they end up chewing up all your time, and it's bad news, and you don't like somebody who's going to be there if you don't know exactly what they're going to say. And it's hard to imagine why they would think they know what he's going to say, given the political situation. Greg sends us another note here that he has been excused, Stapien, from the subpoenaed appearance today because his wife, in fact, has gone into labor, according to an official. The committee today will show video clips from his closed-door interview instead, according to Billy House, a reporter who is in, I guess, a position to know such things, says Greg. Greg says it was from Billy House. I said the part about him being positioned to know these things. Well, that answers part of the question anyway. Like the fact that they are going to substitute his live testimony with video clips means that they had reason to believe that they knew what he was going to say, that he was essentially going to reproduce live and in person, and maybe with some room for additional follow-up questions that may not have been asked during the taped testimony or whatever. But there you have it. So they basically were hoping that they knew what he was going to say. And now they do know what he's going to say because it's taped and he has no opportunity to deviate from it. So there you go. Let's see. Here's the tweet, I guess, about this from Billy House, who tweets as House in session, congressional correspondent he is, for Bloomberg News. I'm speaking in Yoda-ese now. Congressional correspondent he is for Bloomberg News, which I don't particularly like. Previously, a D.C. reporter with the National Journal, Tampa Tribune, Arizona Republic. Do I need to list all these out? Anyway, does he tweet this later? Yes. I am unaware of any, quote, new father privilege against having to eventually show up in person, but not sure the committee will demand that of Stapien as it plans to show video from his previous closed-door testimony. So, I don't see very much in the way of angle working here possible for Stapien. I mean, if they've got the taped testimony, he can't undo that. And he can't have that, ruled out of order or anything like that. So what he said, and it's going on record, and people will see it. At best, he's not there in person to do it, but the taped testimony will surely make Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. and others mad. They'll be just as mad that he gave this testimony on tape. I don't see a great deal of advantage to not showing up. Unless, again, his wife isn't in labor and he's absconding to, Doha or something. I got no idea. But at any rate, that's the news. We'll figure it out afterwards. All right, let's see. A number of other issues that we could and should be addressing have parked themselves either in Pocket or in my KITM hashtag. Let's go see what else is going on. Right. Mighty OCD has sent us pretty much the same thing. The tweets from Manu Raju, who says the committee has video of Stephen's closed deposition that they plan to use instead per multiple sources. So I think everything's covered there. And Mighty OCD sent the Talking Points memo piece as well. So a lot of good eyes on the same good material. Thanks to everybody. Speaking of which, Truro Renfro sent info relative to the thing mentioned in the early minutes of the show. 20 million people having watched the hearing. Donald Trump, of course, running around saying they're losers, it's terrible ratings. But as was pointed out here, the first episode of The Apprentice was watched by 4.6 million people, making it the show's most popular launch since 2017. I guess this, what does this mean? This was dated January 7th, 2022. Does that mean the new Apprentice that came? But is that the one that was hosted by someone else? And was that someone else, Arnold Schwarzenegger? So maybe, I don't know. It doesn't matter. There was never a time at which anything hosted by Donald Trump approached 20 million viewers. We can just leave it at that, I think. Okay. And I should acknowledge again, we left aside because we launched straight into our discussion Bill's morning tweet, but I hope this is over by now because he was saying, doing the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now tweet, as he often does, and says, I hope you can hear this tweet because the garbage truck is outside our house and it's really noisy. It happens. It does happen. I hope it's over by now because I can't imagine an hour of that nonsense going on. All right. Let's see. Other items up for discussion. There are many. Rebecca Romans has a large list of suggestions here, though I'm wondering they are. It's an interesting roundup of things from the weekend plus news from this morning, including the oddball news with a super dark punchline on it. I must say, credit for that one. News reported by Philip Lewis on Twitter that a Michigan man is in critical condition after losing both his arms in a house explosion. Dozens of firearms, loaded AR-style magazines, not clips, but magazines, small explosive devices, and thousands of rounds of ammunition were found inside. Sounds like he was an Amway salesman. But, okay, I'm not certain what happened. But by the way, like I said, super dark joke here. Ammosexual, as we frequently call people like this, disarmed himself. Oh, wow. Holy moly. But no one could deserve it more, I guess, unless we find out that he was just making explosives and fighting for who knows what, in the never-ending battle of right Twix against left Twix. It could have been innocuous. The innocuous making of bombs and packing of it, there's no good reason for this. And quite honestly, I think we all know exactly what he had in mind, and it's probably pretty good that he's not going to be available for that activity after all. And interestingly, he deprived himself of his own Second Amendment rights. First of all, he no longer has the right to bear arms. Second of all, unless he can shoot with his feet, his gun-wielding days are over. Now he'll be suing people. They don't make guns fireable with feet. This is a violation of my rights. Goodness, there's a lot going on. All right, let's see. A couple other items in here. Oh, Patrick Snyder, I have a backlog on your stories again as well. I'll see if I can get around to some of those. I can't justify this story, but I'm gonna mention it. Maybe you want to read it. The Daily Beast. I marked this story because it was unbelievable. The headline intrigued me. I can't justify going and reading this without catching up on the suggestions that others of you have made. But cupcake mogul led a wild double life using dead baby's identity, feds say. Wow. This is something for everyone in this Hallmark Channel movie upcoming. The only twist they have to add to this is that the cupcake mogul led a double wild life in which she was supposed to be present at two different small-town Christmas parties at the same time using a dead baby's identity, feds say. Now I've got a story. Okay. I mean, don't you want to Read it. By the way, the fake name that she was using, does this mean the baby's name was this? The fake name, her name was Ava Virginia Missildine. I'm guessing at all the pronunciations. Ava, A-V-A, Virginia, just like it sounds, and Missildine, Misseldine. That's her real name, which is not bad. But the fake name she was using was Brie, B-R-I-E, like the cheese, Brie Bourgeois. Which could be a drag name, could be anything. I don't know. Brie Bourgeois. Bourgeois. Yeah. I don't know why I would have said, if I'm looking to fake an identity, I come up with there's a baby just born, there was a birth certificate made, the baby has died, I might steal this identity. I would say that's a red flag name, Brie Bourgeois. Don't do it. But don't do any of it. I don't know. Anyway, so there you go. It's crazy. It's a weird story. Very funky. Good Friday sort of material. I'll put it out there. Whatever. Maybe you read it. Maybe you don't. Let's move on. I thought that was pretty incredible. Oh, you know what? Here, this has come recommended by one of our correspondents as well. And I finally did read it and mark it for inclusion, and it feels like a Patrick Snyder suggestion. Could have been somebody else, but it has to do with Ukraine. And there are a couple of things that have been suggested I really need to catch up with on Ukraine. Patrick Snyder, by the way, also made mention of the Coeur d'Alene arrests of the Patriot Front folks, so I could easily credit him with having brought that to our attention as well. Okay, let's see. But Timothy Snyder is responsible for this thread, and this seems of some interest and gives me an entree to another item that I've kind of missed about Ukraine. He wrote this back on, not that long ago, on Saturday, June 11th. Russia, he says, has a hunger plan. Vladimir Putin is preparing to starve much of the developing world as the next stage of his war in Europe. Very interesting thing that you might not have given some thought to, but for the fact that you may already have read this Timothy Snyder. Very popular, very widely shared thread. Tim Snyder, by the way, the Levin Professor of History at Yale, which you all already knew because I know you're all a lot of Yale graduates. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, he says, this is the plan. In normal times, Ukraine is a leading exporter of foodstuffs. That's like basically wheat, I think, is the big crop, and not, ding-dongs or anything like that. We're the leading exporter of that. But real foodstuffs. A Russian naval blockade, however, now prevents Ukraine from exporting grain. If the Russian blockade continues, tens of millions of tons of food will rot in silos. See, wheat. I mean, you don't put ding-dongs in silos. And tens of millions of people in Africa and Asia will starve. The horror of Putin's hunger plan, about which I should not be making jokes, I guess, is so great that we have a hard time apprehending it. We also tend to forget how central food is to politics. Some historical examples can help, and he is a professor of history, so I bet he'll have some. The idea that controlling Ukrainian grain can change the world is not new. In fact, both Stalin and Hitler wished to do so. They're not good men, these two. For Stalin, Ukraine's black earth was to be exploited to build an industrial economy for the USSR. In fact, collectivized agriculture killed about 4 million Ukrainians. And a very timely mention here. I never did get around to buying and reading the book, but I can't recall who it is who wrote it, but it's starting to come to mind. At any rate, an excellent historical book. Yeah, it was. It's Anne Applebaum. I had it, and I was like, I don't want to say it if it's not right. But Anne Applebaum wrote a book that I was considering reading, like, I don't know, maybe during the pandemic or something. Red Famine, Stalin's War on Ukraine. And I didn't have in mind, I don't think, when I thought about reading it, the war between Russia and Ukraine, because that has been on since 2014. So it was current when I saw it. But, of course, this current round of the war hadn't yet broken out. But it would be really interesting background reading. But it's good background information generally. And I'm sure, well, that's what Tim Snyder is talking about here. The collectivized agriculture killing about 4 million Ukrainians. Now, notably, as people began to die in large numbers, Stalin blamed the Ukrainians themselves. Now, get this. Soviet propaganda called those who drew attention to the famine Nazis. Sound familiar? Actual Nazis, of course, had related ideas. They liked the idea of controlling Ukrainian agriculture, and this was, in fact, Hitler's central war aim, at least in the East. I would, I guess, add, but maybe it was the central war aim everywhere. Hitler wished to redirect Ukrainian grain from the Soviet Union to Germany in the hopes of, in addition to feeding Germans, I guess, starving millions of Soviet citizens. The Second World War was fought for Ukraine and in considerable measure in Ukraine between two dictators who wanted to control food supplies. That puts a different spin on the Second World War for you. Russian, well, not for Russians, it doesn't, but Russian memory politics prepared the way for the 21st century hunger plan. Russians are told that Stalin's famine was an accident and that Ukrainians are Nazis. This makes theft and blockade seem acceptable. Putin's hunger plan is, I believe, to work on 3 levels. First, it is part of a larger attempt to destroy the Ukrainian state by cutting off its exports. Putin's hunger plan is also meant to generate refugees from North Africa and the Middle East, areas usually fed by Ukraine. This would generate instability in the European Union. Finally, and most horribly, a world famine is a necessary backdrop for a Russian propaganda campaign against Ukraine. Actual mass death is needed as the backdrop for a propaganda contest. When the food riots begin, as starvation spreads, Russian propaganda will blame Ukraine and call for Russia's territorial gains in Ukraine to be recognized and for all sanctions to be lifted. Russia is planning to starve Asians and Africans in order to win its war in Europe. Wow. This is a new level of colonialism and the latest chapter of hunger politics. That's the end of the thread, but what an interesting point that is. Imagine blaming Ukraine for it. And, I mean, it's not that the rest of the world hasn't been paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine, but, I mean, when it's a matter of starvation, right? You know, where they might say, I understand and I appreciate the difficulties you're having, but at this point, Ukraine, I want to, you know, this is the aim for the Russians is to get other countries to pressure Ukraine into recognizing or surrendering territory and saying we recognize that the territory lost to the Russians in this war should just be considered Russia. We'll take what's left. Let's have peace. Let's end the sanctions against Russia. Let's end the naval blockade and get the grain flowing again because, you know, now the rest of the world is pressuring them to do this because it's literally a matter of life and death for them. So, I mean, it's an evil genius kind of a plan. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if there's alternative food sources that can relieve the pressure of that. Those sources might be American. We'll see whether we're able to produce this amount of grain for export in the face of worsening conditions due to climate change. But, you know, something to think about. That's really an angle I hadn't given any attention to. Something else, which, now, did I put it away in pocket anywhere? I don't know, probably when it was suggested, but I'd have to scroll way, way back to try and find it, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to. absent the break, but maybe during the break. Well, since it's coming up anyway, and I would never get through the story before then. But I'm reminded from this story that I haven't discussed the story of what Russians are doing with, I guess, captured Ukrainians in the war, and their aim always being to delegitimize Ukraine, to erase their independent stature and identity, and to make the claim that Ukraine has always been Russian and is part of Russia. And part of their effort to do this is capturing Ukrainians, also, up to and including not just combatant Ukrainians, but just kidnapping people, children even, and particularly, I guess, under the excuse of taking children who have been orphaned by their invasion of Ukraine and shipping them to Russia. So whether that's moving them to orphanages or having them adopted by Russian families who would, of course, be instructed to de-Ukrainianize them in the process of caring for them, I guess, depending on how old these kids are, it would be more or less difficult. And then, of course, you can just remove whole sections of the population from conquered cities in Ukraine and ship them to the interior of Russia, either as prisoners or just relocating them there. But in any way, you drop people in the middle of, I don't know, Siberia, where I guess they still do these things. And basically, you don't even need to fence them in. I challenge you to walk back to Ukraine from Siberia, but they would try to do that. So they probably did fence them in, but you can just move them there. Not unlike what they've done, Russians and Soviets in the past when they've had been in the middle of fighting wars and shipping German prisoners east and just using them as slave labor in Siberia. I don't know if the conditions are the same, but, you're shipped to the middle of Siberia. There's not a lot of people that are going to be able to monitor what's going on for you, and that conditions there meet international human rights standards, et cetera, and just one of any number of troublesome policies being executed by the Russians against their Ukrainian neighbors that just can't be watched alongside the spectacle of the battle. Anyway, I'll try and use some of the break to see if I can't dig up some of those things. Look at this. And I guess Patrick Snyder has been sent. Patrick Snyder, have you been sending Timothy Snyder's threads to me? Because it's a fairly common last name. Any relation there by any chance? Because he's a big fan. I see that there's some more here from Patrick. And I'll tell you, I've run into one thread that he sent, which he says, a good companion thread to Professor Timothy Snyder's from earlier today, but this goes back to June 4th. But it's on a different subject. Although I wonder whether, those two worth mentioning. However, we're coming up on the break, so I guess I'll continue to scroll and look for earlier pieces. I think that it's been about, 3 weeks or more, I feel like, since I made the decision to put off for the time being the story of people being abducted from Ukraine and shipped to the interior of Russia. So I'll see if I can't find it anywhere, but there's a large mix of items still in the queue from that. All right, well, we'll look elsewhere for now. Let's see. I should bring to mind for everybody, even though we're headed into the break, this story in Rolling Stone from Aswin Subsang, whose name I always hope I'm getting right, but who's moved publications. He's now at Rolling Stone, or at least this piece is published there. And having to do with undoing the Peter Baker narrative even more than Thursday's hearing did for Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner says this headline on this story: wasn't just involved in Trump's push to overturn 2020. He helped start it. Well, that's very different and probably more in line with our understanding of what kind of person Jared Kushner really is. The subheader says Jared helped create what then morphed into the Rudy Clown Show, one source tells Rolling Stone. So that kind of explains it, how Kushner could believe he's washing his hands of it, but he could still be intimately responsible for it. He started in on this thing, and then when Rudy Giuliani came in and took over, Jared could have said, all right, well, then I'm out.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I found it. It took me a while to find it, but here it is from Patrick Snyder. I think about these things, Patrick. Sometimes I can't get to it on the air, but, sometimes I wait 2 months to bring this one. This is from April 23rd. You sent this to me. The thread itself being from April 22nd, but I imagine it's still ongoing, so it's worth bringing up, and it sounds nefarious enough that it still warrants our attention. Who's the writer of the actual thread here? Nata? I don't know. Natalia maybe? Nata Druhak, Druhak, Ukrainian, born in Berlin, but I guess keeping a close eye on things. From where? I don't know. Maybe she's back in Ukraine now. Maybe not. Anyway, this claim made again on April 22nd, about 500,000 Ukrainians were deported to Russia. It says for only 2 months, I guess maybe in the last 2 months. Is that what we're talking about? Some of them are on their way to labor camps like Gulag. Russians want to use them to build new cities in Siberia. So, if not exactly, I guess probably it is. It's certainly forced labor. They didn't want to go there. But, it's a common practice. It's interesting when if the Russians are called out on it, for instance, by anybody from the United Arab Emirates or something like that, where they would say, you're building new cities all the time with imported labor. And some people say they work under slave-like conditions as well. But okay, so here's the deal. 500,000 Ukrainians deported to Russia, some on their way to labor camps. Russians want to use them to build new cities in Siberia. Their passports are taken away. I mean, how are you going to fight that? They've been captured or just grabbed off the street, for that matter, probably from Ukraine. Passports taken away. Some of the people managed to escape to third countries, and you got to do all your explaining at the border. Where's your passport? It was stolen. I'm Ukrainian. The Russians grabbed me off the street from Mariupol and put me on a train and who knows what. Among the deported are 121,000 children. They are to be illegally adopted by Russian families. It's always about Russian adoptions. This is amazing. The adoptions are actually are part and parcel of Russian policy of all sorts. After all, it turns out, Russians want them to forget their origins, forget their family, their language, Either in schools or in Russians' homes, they will be subjected to Russian propaganda. I think it is the best answer why Ukrainians cannot fail to win this war. It would mean not peace, but much bigger numbers of the world knowing about it. The most frightening events committed by Russians, too, we were reading in history books, is happening now. Okay, well, who knows how many languages Nata is fluent in, and pretty good in English, but I guess that's why I'm tripping over reading this stuff. Okay, there are a couple of skips and bumps and all of this, but we'll make the most of it. The most frightening events committed by Russians, too, we were reading in history books about, is happening now. We were reading about in history books, is happening now. There are still useful idiots who call us too emotional. There are still people enjoying Russian ballet and concerts, and those who want us to reconcile. And some of them will have good self-interested, but good reasons wanting Russia and Ukraine to end their war and reconcile, because they're starving to death waiting for it to happen. Whether or not they're enjoying Russian ballet in the meantime is doubtful. Anyway, she says that's the end, but then the thread actually continues. While searching for proof, I came upon this tweet. 2 years ago, deportation to Kazakhstan took place in 1929 to 1933 time frame. I'm helping translate some of this, I guess. I am shocked about the speed of atrocities now. And this is a tweet from May 31st, of 2020. So about a year old when she retweeted it, from MFA of Ukraine. And what is MFA of Ukraine? I don't know. MFA. Don't know what it means, actually, but I'm trying to think. Welcome to MFA Twitter account. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, probably in Ukraine. That's my guess, given the subject. And it reads, and it's flagged here as a Ukraine government organization here by Twitter. I guess Twitter safety hanging this flag. So, probably Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Today, Kazakhstan marks the Remembrance Day of victims of political repressions. Around 500,000 Ukrainians were deported to Kazakhstan. We mourn together and bow our heads, praying for the terrible atrocities of the repressions to never be repeated again. It's a little stilted, but you get the idea. And now, happening all over again. 500,000 Ukrainians deported again, just in the last couple of months, according to Nata Druhak here. How Russians have managed to transport such large number of people. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to have to read it verbatim here. 1, they call it evacuation. That is, they shoot, and they, by the way, shoot those who try to flee from the occupied territories to Ukrainian-controlled areas. To save lives, people agree to choose Russia instead. Save their own lives, I guess. Russians accuse Ukrainian armed forces of committing crimes. In occupied areas, Ukrainian media are cut off. It's replaced, of course, with Russian propaganda. Russians, it is claimed here, will wear Ukrainian uniforms while shooting. People don't have mobile connections to talk to those from Ukraine-controlled areas and get alternative information. Over 11 min of Ukrainians, 11 million maybe? 11 million Ukrainians have been displaced since February 24th. 5.1 million internally, or 6.5 million have gone abroad, according to UN data. In relative numbers, data seem to be reasonable. New data, the mass deportation started on February 18th, before the full-scale invasion. Wow. 90,000 people were transported to Russia, including over 1,000 orphans. The source here cited as Ludmila Denisova, Ombudsman of Ukraine. Whatever. Is that an official position? I assume. I don't know. But that's what it's no link or anything, but that's the claim. Russia set up special filtration camps, they're calling them, to distribute people. After the filtration, some killed, some women raped. Others are transported to the remote regions of Russia. They are deprived of means of communication. This is a picture included here that is said to have been taken by one Sergei Pivovarov of what he says is a camp in the Rostov region. Though it looks like they are in train cars here, but not cattle cars. There's seating, but still. Or maybe they're on a bus. It's hard to tell. Next up here, during the filtration, Russians take away their passports. Instead, they receive a paper of some kind. It forbids them to leave the place of residence that they're being put in for 2 years and obliges them to work at the defined workplace. Again, more photos here credited to people with Slavic names. That's all I can tell you. And claiming to be a train arriving in the city of Voronezh. Voronezh? Or is that supposed to be like the Russian version of Verona? I don't know. Those who got access to the internet or Ukrainian radio could find out about the opportunities to leave Russia. Some advices published here in Ukrainian, okay? We're not going to bother with the translation, but the official spokesperson, I guess, yes, on deportation is Lyudmila Denisova, ombudsman of Ukraine. That's interesting. So I don't know. Is she a Russian official set up with the title of ombudsman? Like, okay, if you're Ukrainian and you have a complaint about your being kidnapped and deported to Siberia, talk to Lyudmila? I don't know. Well, anyway, some of her recent interviews, one in Ukrainian, one in Russian, some YouTube pieces attached here. I hope the May 9th parade in Germany will be suspended this year. Okay. I guess that's the victory parade. But anyway, spreading of propaganda and praising the war have nothing to do with democracy. And Soviet flags, ribbon of St. George, and the Z and V are symbols of terror. The last thing Ukrainians fleeing from a war want to see. Okay. Interesting. Wow. So anyway, it was a little difficult to parse out exactly what was happening here, but clearly the claim is quite startling. And I just wanted to make you aware of it because it was in the back of my mind, and we really haven't talked much about it, even though Ukraine comes up every day. And I thought, well, we should know at least that the claim is being made, and that there in the background is this tremendous human rights violation happening. I mean, I don't think we had any real serious doubts that there might be some afoot in Ukraine, but now we have this very specific claim being made at any rate, and we should keep an eye on it. Let me jump back though to the Aswin Subsang with Adam Rawnsley piece in Rolling Stone that seems to stand the Kushner-Baker narrative of what Kushner was doing in the final days of the Trump administration, and whether he's washed his hands of Donald Trump or not, puts that narrative in danger above and beyond what last Thursday's testimony did, videotape testimony. Jared Kushner knew his father-in-law and boss, Donald Trump, had lost to Joe Biden, but that didn't stop Kushner from trying to help his wife's dad cling to power. And by the way, it just struck me for the first time that his father-in-law is Donald Trump, and his father is it Charles, his dad's name, Kushner, who is a criminal himself. Like, it's, I guess, I don't know. Maybe that'll happen at his trial. They'll say Jared had no father figures to look to learn how to not be a criminal. You see, so it's really society's fault. That might work. Anyway, nowadays, Kushner seeks investments for his firm and attempts to launder his image. The former senior White House aide would like everyone in the public and the press to believe that he had nothing to do with the January 6th insurrection or Team Trump's most scandalous efforts to overthrow the American democratic order. However, there is one problem. Kushner absolutely was intimately involved with Trump's scheme to overturn Joe Biden's win in the 2020 election. It's just that he bailed on the mission early to save himself. I mean, other people could have had the good sense to do that. But, okay, so he's not exactly innocent here. Far from it. According to 4 people familiar with the matter, in the week following Election Day in early November of that year, Kushner took charge in overseeing development of plans to keep Trump in office. Kushner just wasn't publicly ostentatious about it the way Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani and others were. During that first week, Kushner repeatedly met with Trump and other high-ranking aides to the then president to discuss and map out possible strategies for multiple-pronged legal battles and a scorched-earth messaging war against the victorious Biden campaign, the knowledgeable sources tell Rolling Stone. Despite all the strong evidence to the contrary, Kushner told Trump that there could still be a path for the then president in a number of critical states, including Arizona, that had already been called for Biden. In those early days of the scheme to overturn the election, 2 of the sources say Kushner also personally encouraged Trump to fight on and ignore people who were saying it was over, and to stick to the burgeoning plans and court challenges spearheaded by the 2020 campaign attorneys and senior staff. Kushner was, of course, in the room with these fellow Trump lieutenants when the plans were first being crafted. Axios reported this at the time as the trusted son-in-law urging Trump to explore and pursue, quote, legal remedies to the election results. Earlier this week, the New York Times published an article titled How Jared Kushner Washed His Hands of Donald Trump Before January 6th, renewing questions of just how complicit Kushner was in his father-in-law's months-long attempted coup d'etat. Jared was directly involved, one of these sources, a former senior Trump aide who worked on the effort to nullify the election outcome, said, there was a brief window when it seemed like he was positioning himself to be the Jim Baker of this fight. It didn't last long. He backed away from it, but he was there and got his hands dirty like everyone else did. Baker, a towering figure in the Republican Party, helmed the legal team for George W. Bush during the chaotic Florida recount that ultimately handed Bush the presidency. Jared helped create what then morphed into the Rudy Clown Show, the source added. Rolling Stone's calls and messages to Kushner were not returned on Thursday, but 5 days after Election Day 2020, and the day after major outlets had already called the election for Biden, Trump advisor Jason Miller told the Daily Beast, Jared has been more hardcore in fighting back on this than anybody. Regardless of the depths of Kushner's participation at the time, the 4 sources who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss behind-the-scenes details broadly agree that by the second or third week of Trump's anti-democratic crusade, Kushner's involvement had mostly, if not wholly, evaporated. Throughout the entirety of the Trump presidency, Kushner had a reputation, one that was a reliable recurring source of much derision and inside humor within the upper ranks of the administration, for suddenly vanishing, going skiing, for instance, suddenly vanishing from a major policy or political initiative when the going got tough or the public relations baggage swelled too large. Trump's former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly, for one, bitterly viewed Kushner and his wife and his fellow senior advisor Ivanka Trump as annoying dilettantes. Well, that seems about right. And as the Giuliani-led antics and conspiracy theory mongering grew so outrageous and embarrassing, including a mid-November 2020 press conference during which Giuliani's hair dye appeared to melt off his head, and MAGA lawyer Sidney Powell went as far as to implicate the long-dead Hugo Chavez in the fictitious 2020, quote, fraud conspiracy. To some of the self-aware denizens of Trumpland, Kushner saw his cue to quietly exit. He, of course, continued to appear, at least superficially, supportive of his father-in-law's mission, and refused to speak out about how the about the doomed effort. Kushner, despite some pleading by his friends for him to do something to talk Trump down from his disastrous and eventually violent attempt to stay in power, didn't even lift a finger to try to play the allegedly moderating role in the West Wing that he, for years, falsely cultivated a reputation for assuming. In a New York Times piece published Wednesday, the paper reports, while the president spent the hours and days after the polls closed complaining about imagined fraud in battleground states and plotting a strategy to hold on to power, his daughter and son-in-law were already washing their hands of the Trump presidency. Certain corridors of Trump world didn't take kindly to the piece. If the plan had worked, and if Pence had done what the former president wanted him to do, Jared would be jumping up and down or calling reporters to take credit for being the man behind it all and the guy who made it all happen, says a former senior Trump administration official who was present for the tumultuous presidential transition. Come on, spare me. Probably true. As for U.S. lawmakers and staffers investigating the deadly Capitol riot that resulted from Trump's efforts, the January 6th committee has actively sought information related to both Jared and Ivanka since at least January and requested that the National Archives turn over all White House documents and communications from the day of the attack relating to the couple, among other Trump aides. Kushner met with the committee for lengthy interviews in late March, a conversation described by Democratic members of the panel as helpful and useful in subsequent media interviews. Ivanka appeared for an interview with the committee a few days later. Indeed, the House panel investigating Trump and the Capitol assault hopes to use Kushner's own words, and they did, and video of his interview with the committee against his own dad-in-law. And of course, ads have repositioned things. Here we go. On Thursday night, during the primetime inaugural public hearing of the committee, the assembled lawmakers aired a previously unreleased clip of Kushner telling investigators that he felt the resignation threats that, at that time, from then White House counsel Pat Cipollone and others were merely, quote, whining. Not long after that video aired, the New York Times reported that Mr. Kushner's words enraged Mr. Cipollone's former colleagues, many of whom traded messages as they complained to reporters and one another as the hearing went on that the former president's son-in-law was arrogant. Since leaving office in January, Kushner has kept a low profile and launched a new investment firm, Affinity Partners. But the fund has once again landed him in the crosshairs of congressional investigators. In April, the House Oversight Committee demanded documents from Kushner and his firm as part of what it said was an investigation into whether Kushner improperly secured a $2 billion investment for the fund from Saudi Crown Prince Mr. Bonesaw Mohammed bin Salman based on his former role in government. Okay, so much of the conclusion stuff we have already gone over, but an important note, I think, in the development of the Kushner narrative. Let's see. Where else shall we go with this? Other things to touch on. Well, there's stuff. Maybe we'll save that for tomorrow and go elsewhere. But Pence World's final takedown of Trump's January 6th bid to remain in power revealed in his lawyer's memo. Politico getting hold of Pence's legal counsel's memo. But, I mean, we can all guess pretty much what it says. But I think it would be worth reading over and parsing a little bit. And then, of course, the New York Times report over the weekend, too, that the January 6th panel puts focus on cabinet discussions about removing Trump, the 25th Amendment. And apparently Mike Pompeo and Steve Mnuchin in on the discussions. And an interesting pairing, the two of them. I've pointed out a couple times in the past when, implicating Trump in the January 6th activities, how enormously dangerous it was. I mean, we all know this to be the case inherently from what we know about January 6th, but every once in a while I think it pays to pause and point out that, for instance, when we talk about there being no extraordinary security activity going on at the White House, despite the fact that the Capitol is under siege a mile away, and what it tells you, of course, about whether or not Trump considers himself, at the time anyway, to be in control of the insurrection. Ordinarily, if the legislative branch is under siege a mile away, you have some, panic room situations at the White House, but not the case. He's happily munching Cheetos, watching TV next to the Oval Office. And as we've mentioned a number of times, no reports of any unusual security activity or activity whatsoever, really, from the White House pool reporter. Busy but routine is pretty much what they said. And that's pretty amazing given what was going on over there. So we've mentioned that, but it's also worth mentioning as I try and underscore the gravity of the situation, that the first, second, and third in line of succession to the presidency, the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President pro tempore, are all under siege and in hiding as a result of the January 6th insurrection. And I had, your Twitter pal Sponson just sort of called out, is that the case? Was that Grassley was in seclusion? Was he in a secure location in the building? And it's unclear because the protective services, and I think it's Secret Service, it's responsible for them, because they're constitutional officers and top in line for succession to the presidency, that they had special security details, and I think so they are Secret Service. But it's not entirely clear where they parked Grassley. It's possible that they may have evacuated him from the Capitol campus and sheltered him elsewhere, but they just don't say and won't say. But it's also entirely possible, given the fact that other members of Congress said that they were taken out by security and taken to a secure, undisclosed location. I love that they add undisclosed. That's a leftover, I think, from the terminology they used and how they hid Dick Cheney during the September 11th attacks. A secure location, but an undisclosed one. Well, if it's in the building, like, okay, undisclosed as to what number the room is, but I mean, okay. And you want to keep that secret, but it seems like they're just gratuitously including undisclosed and all that. But anyway, there were other members of Congress who said they, too, were evacuated from the floor of the House and or Senate, and that they were kept in secure, undisclosed locations, but that those locations were clearly within the Capitol campus. They're not as clear about Grassley, but the fact is, he was locked down and in hiding, and that's really basically enough to make the point that the anyone who would have succeeded to the presidency if Trump were, arrested or otherwise eliminated from the scene, the presidency, unless, in his mind, remember, he's preventing this from passing to Joe Biden through his stupid plan. It was never going to work, but in his mind, maybe he thinks it is going to work. Okay. In all of that, he basically, through the insurrection and siege of the Capitol, takes out anyone between him and the rest of the line of succession that hasn't been appointed by him. I mean, I think that's really an interesting note. I don't know whether he really planned all of this out. And yes, Grassley's a Republican, and maybe he would have relied on. But then again, so's Pence, and he was happy to see Pence being called out for hanging in all of this. So, but anyone who isn't one of his direct appointees, with the exception, I guess, of Pence, who was sort of chosen by him, but he's mad at him now. So eliminating Pence, can't have Pelosi, by no means, of course. And Grassley, maybe he's too much of a rhino. He's not my guy. All right, well, he's under siege too. Next in line to the presidency, if you've never checked I think we talked about it the other day, as a matter of fact. But this is what brought it up when I saw, look, it's Pompeo and Mnuchin talking about invoking the 25th Amendment. And, if Pence has been hanged, well, then, so much the better for us, because as it happens, the very next in line for succession to the presidency after Grassley is Pompeo as Secretary of State. And wouldn't you know that the very next one after Pompeo is the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin? How interesting that they're talking 25th Amendment and putting their name to it. It's just interesting stuff. All right. I said I was going to go in another direction. Now, I'm out of time to do that, but I can at least tell you which other direction it is, so that maybe we can get there. The direction is west. I want to go to Wisconsin, where, what's his name? Gableman, the former Supreme Court Justice, Michael Gableman, who's been working the angles as some sort of special counsel appointed by the Republican Assembly Speaker there, Robin Vos, to, as they say, lead the partisan probe of the 2020 election in Wisconsin. He's gotten himself in trouble again. And his whole investigation has been a shambles, omnishambles, as they used to say, back when it was Mitt Romney's day. But apparently he got himself in a confrontation in a courtroom directly with a judge, like sitting there in the courtroom and everything, and has been held in contempt of court as a result. And there's some video of the confrontation between them, and I mean, it's looking quite like Gableman has like lost his marbles. I have a piece here from the Wisconsin Examiner. Ruth Conniff has written it up, so you can take a look. Maybe we'll go over it and circle back to Wisconsin in the coming days. Gableman's contempt and the destruction of democracy, tying it all together, as it should be. Now, though, we're going to have to leave the job of tying everything together to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next to tie this and that together. What's he got on tap today? Trump's comment to stand back and stand by tripled the Proud Boys membership. And that wasn't that was before January 6th. Then, on the rest of his menu, let's see, a Virginia city plagued by violence, will hold a gun buyback event. An assistant police chief in a suburban city near Seattle who displayed a Nazi insignia will be paid $1.5 million to go away. Yikes.
You have been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
And there's more, of course, from the Pacific Northwest, as well. Bremerton, Washington, man charged with threatening to kill the city prosecutor and the mayor. It seems to be epidemic out there these days. There is, of course, international news, which I'll let him sum up for you next, and bring you his eclectic mix of news and reports next. See you tomorrow.